Greetings and salutations, this is Emperor Vespasian and his trusty sidekick.
Hello.
And today I'm going to do a quick video painting a medieval Russian, who is this chap here. I picked a chap with a mace because he was the last one in the box that I haven't painted yet, so that's what you end up with. So now I'm just going to start off with an undercoat. When I first saw the box of medieval Russians, I just had to get one, mainly to paint up to see what they look like. I wasn't sure whether I'd actually be doing them as a game, but yeah, I think they're brilliant, and it's going to be fun doing a game with them, and you can use them for quite a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah, it's quite generic, isn't it?
Yeah, so you can use them as Byzantine heavy infantry.
Yeah.
You can use them to fight against the Crusaders. The biggest crusade was the Northern Crusade.
Yeah.
When the Christian knights attempted stupidly to invade Russia.
Yeah.
And learnt what many leaders have learnt over the years: when you invade Russia, Russia will eventually win and burn your house.
Well, they never burnt our houses though, did they? They never got England.
We never went to war with them.
Good point.
We never tried invading Russia.
Maybe it's not a good idea.
Although Grandpapa fought in Russia.
Yeah, I did think so.
Yeah. He was most miffed because he'd spent his entire military career fighting Germans, and then he found himself sat with Germans in a trench shooting Russians, which was very confusing to him. You know, people who've been trying to kill him for years were now sat next to him, helping him out.
Yeah, that was a little bit odd.
Must have been rather confusing for the chap.
Yeah.
He fought up in Leningrad during the Bolshevik Revolution. Now the colour I use is red, a little bit of light red mixed dark red, just to give it a little two-tone. I'm just painting around the skirt. Oh, missed a bit. Messed that bit up. I'm using the wrong brush for this, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally using the wrong brush for this. I've messed that up.
So for every single painting video that you've done, apart from trolls, you've used the wrong brush.
He always does.
Yeah.
Once he forgets what he's doing.
I'll do, because it's confusing when I'm doing it on a video.
Oh, right, that's the excuse.
Yeah. Right, so there we go. These chaps can also fight against the Mongols, of course. The Golden Horde invaded Russia, and the Russians kind of became a client state of the Mongols. The Mongols didn't really have the manpower to occupy Russia, so Russia sort of offered to become a client state. As long as Russia paid taxes, the Mongols left them alone. And the Russian leaders found this very useful because they could raise taxes, and when people complained, you could blame it on the Mongols. So that worked. And they used to pile it all up in the middle of Moscow, a street in Moscow. And the street is called the Street of the Golden Horde because that's where the gold used to be put. Interesting factoid.
You have all the interesting factoids.
Yeah. No, I like Russian history. I think it's interesting. In fact, all history is interesting. And I just like reading history. Better to read history than be part of it.
Both.
No, when you're part of it, you tend to be face down in a ditch at the end.
Yeah, we're part of it right now. So.
Yeah, we're not sure how close we are from ending up face down in a ditch, but we're definitely part of history at the moment. I wonder what historians of the future will call it. Oh.
Well, by then we'll be in. Because you were playing Star Trek today, weren't you?
Yep.
And by then, historians will be too busy going around the galaxy delivering fuel to different ships.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing in Star Trek recently. I've just been flying around the galaxy delivering dilithium crystals to ships. It's boring. So boring. I want to just blow stuff up and stuff.
You're level 8, I'm level 50, so
Yeah, I know.
I'm blowing stuff up for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, so the glorious Russians, they started out as well, so the Slavic peoples, they sort of started out just sort of living in huts and stuff. They used to fight a lot of civil wars, so they could never agree on who would rule over them. And in the end, they apparently invited the Vikings in to come and run the place, which was very useful because the Vikings were traders. And so they brought with them wealth and money and new trade routes, the ability to move around a lot. Very useful for the Russian people. The term Rus is the group of Vikings that settled in Russia.
Right.
Which is a slightly interesting fact. Anything else interesting about Russians? Well, we've got the...
Yeah, they control the biggest country in the world.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. They've got the... They had a huge landmass to rule over. And this is before the Mongols came. And of course, when the Mongols came, they ended up being kind of part of the Golden Horde, and then they defeated the Mongols and conquered the whole of Mongolia, which was payback.
And now it's not so big.
No, well, when Russia started out as Russia, as the country we nowadays call Russia, these are the guys who started it, and they basically had enough of the Mongols. And so they...
That's because they had to pay the Mongols all the time.
Yeah, and they decided they'd had enough of the Mongols, and instead of paying the Mongols for the Golden Horde, they spent the money on an army and buying off allies, the people down south. They paid off to help, and they defeated the Mongols and brought the Northern Mongol Empire to an end.
Well, to a stop.
No, to an end. They destroyed it. They completely destroyed it. And then the Ottoman Empire decided they fancied their eyes on Russia, or at least the southern parts of Russia, and they did quite well. They overran Ukraine, they overran Crimea and into Georgia, places like that.
Yeah.
Until the 1700s, when the Russians took all of it back and created the country we now call Russia, or the territories.
Yeah, I like what the Russian word for peace is currently not being invaded yet.
Yes, the Russian word for peace directly translates as not currently being attacked. Yes.
But normally used to be completely invaded all the time.
Yeah, they got quite annoying at one point for them. it's interesting that they were mostly, in fact the Russians didn't really care what religion you were if you lived in Russia. As long as you swore loyalty to Russia, they didn't really care. And most Russians were Russian Orthodox, along with a sizable Muslim population. And of course, there were still remnants of the old pagan faiths from the Vikings, and there were also Zoroastrians who had fled Iran during the Islamic conquest, and they came up to live in places like Georgia and some of the stands. And so the Russians were pretty open-minded as to what religion you were. And the Russians themselves, their version of Christianity was what they have now, which is Russian Orthodox. See, the Russians consider themselves the survivors of the last vestige of the Roman Empire. Russian troops served in the Byzantine Empire throughout the history of the Byzantine Empire. The Varia Guard were mostly Rus, with some Saxons from Britain and some Vikings from the rest of the lands, and they made the elite guard of Russia, of the Byzantians. And when Byzantine fell, the Russians considered themselves to be the heirs of Byzantium, which is why for a considerable amount of time Russian foreign policy has been to retake Byzantine, which is a small town across the sea, across the coast from Turkey.
Which Turkey owns now, don't they?
No, they don't hold Byzantine. No, the Russians took it back in 1783, the Russians took it back, and they were just about to take Constantinople back. Sorry, Istanbul. Yeah, Constantinople. They were just about to take back the Istanbul, and
England stopped them.
And Britain stopped them. Yeah, Britain decided to back the Ottomans because Britain was terrified that if the Ottoman Empire fell, the whole Middle East would just erupt into barbarism and chaos.
Well, it would have.
Wait, it has. So we managed to delay it for a while.
For 1 year.
No, we delayed it for a few hundred years.
So it paid off in the end then?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
No. No, ask people who live in Syria if it paid off. Ask people who live in, just insert name of country in Middle East here, and ask yourself if you want to live there now. See, what Britain was worried about was, and France was a massive supporter of the Ottomans, was that if the empire fell and all that region turned to barbarism, then first of all it would cost commerce countries like Britain and France a lot of money to protect our shipping from raiders, as people no longer trade with, because the empire's collapsed, they'll try and steal things to trade, and so we didn't like the idea of that. And also eventually we would probably have to go in and sort the place out, which is basically what we did do in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it by the British won, you see, so we ended up doing it by putting basically pro-British kings, people who had a tenuous claim to authority, on the throne of all the different Middle Eastern countries, except France. France was Syria. France controlled Syria. And we put these little dictators in all over the place. And they proved to be rather unpopular in the end, and when they fell, these countries slowly began to turn into vague forms of republics or democracies, more republics. And then that all collapsed thanks to the United States in recent times. And Britain. Rather stupid foreign policies. So these guys, this guy you see here, this Russian guy, he was living in that period where everybody was against Russia. Oops. You had the Ottomans coming up from the south. You had the Crusaders coming across from Prussia, Germany. Prussia at the time was Prussia Slavic. Prussia wasn't actually German. Isn't German. The population of Prussia are actually Slavs, but they were conquered by knights, by Crusader knights. And so when Prussia was accepted into Germany, it is in the constitution that Prussia is recognised as a non-German kingdom, as a Slavic nation.
Interesting.
I found that interesting. I finally found that out the other day. I didn't know that. I always thought of Prussia as being fine Germans. Turns out they're Slavs. Right, so I will just stick it to the base now.
Done already?
Yes, this is quite a quick one. Russians are actually really easy to paint. I think I would like to do Northern Crusades with these guys. I just like the idea of Crusader Knights trying to invade Russia.
Right, I'll be playing Crusade Knights.
In snow, where their armour freezes up.
I'll play the Crusader Knights. You play the Russians.
There's certainly interesting things about the Unifier. Just see if I can get the camera positioned a lot closer so you can see it better. It'll probably go blurred actually. Maybe I shouldn't bother. Is that better? I'll put it on a flat surface. In fact, I'll get rid of the painting board because it's annoying. I'll put this chap down without him. It's still setting. Yeah. So you see in his armour and his shield you have a European type shield. The teardrop shield came from Northern Europe and spread out throughout the world. It became quite a useful form of shield because it protects your body at the same time. The armour, the plate armour, comes from sort of Byzantine region, the late Roman Empire. The chainmail neck scarf comes from more the kind of thing they wore in the Ottoman Empire, and the helmet itself is Viking design. So you have all different cultures all coming in together to form these chaps, to form their armour and form the way they look. And I just think that's brilliant, all the different things coming together.
There's going to be at least one person in the comments saying, but Vikings had helmets with horns.
No, people aren't
I bet
that
there's going to be
stupid.
at least one person who's going to say that.
No, people haven't been that stupid for quite a while. And these are late Vikings. We're talking.
I got taught at primary that was that.
We're talking 1400s here. So early 1200s, late 1400s. So sort of tip end of the Dark Ages, medieval period. Yeah, that basic period. I mean, if you give these guys, you can use the heads on the Ottomans, which I have done on a few of my Ottoman soldiers. So yeah, they're pretty. They're not exactly generic. They do fit a Russian period. They definitely look Russian, but you can use them for other interesting projects that you might have going. But we're going to be using for Russians, and as I said, the Northern Crusades would be great to do. So I love the idea of the whole of Christendom basically deciding that they need to wipe Russia off the face of the earth. When they've got a way bigger threat down south, they decide the big...
Well, no, they're already dealing with that problem pretty easily.
Well, no, the Crusader states only lasted a few years. The first crusade was this kind of stopgap. The second crusade was a little bit more effort. And after that, most of the crusades weren't aimed at the Middle East, they were aimed at Russia and places like that. So, yeah, so when the Northern Crusade came, the whole point was to basically turn Russia as a whole into a huge Christian kingdom, which would be a bulwark in the East. What they didn't realise was the Russians themselves were a bulwark.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians didn't want to be ruled by anybody. And the same went for the Ottomans as went for the Crusaders. So the Russians will always fight to defend themselves because they are Russian. Anyway, that's the Russian knight finished. Sorry, the Russian soldier finished. They didn't actually have knights. Their entire army was basically men-at-arms and then sort of not quite serfs, sort of local farmers and stuff who tended to be good in combat because they liked hunting things.
Mm-hmm.
Usually armed with bows. You know, a lot of bows. These would be the normal guys. Every single Russian town had its own militia. So when you raise an army, you don't have a huge Russian army that raises and marches off to fight. You tended, in Nevsky's time, you tended to have sort of the militias from the local towns all gathering together in one place to form an army. And then at the core of that army would be the commander with his own personal retinue, who were usually guys loyal to him or guys paid by the state to fight, professional soldiers. A bit like the housecarls and the carols. So carols would have been your local people, and your housecarls would have been your primary,
Standard army.
yeah, standard army, and then you would have your husband, not your husbandman, no, that's Viking. What do they call the herdsman? Oh no, his husbandman. Help me out here, herdsman. They're Viking, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you would have the sort of armoured troops who look like housecarls, but they're actually the local defence troops. And that's basically what all these guys would be. So you'd have the guys armed with spears, they would be your normal militia infantry. And then the guys armed with all your other weapons, your axes and stuff, that they would actually be your private soldiers, who would do sort of local stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're going to have to do a few videos on this army though as we build it. There are some cavalry recently available, which I am looking into. And I'm also wondering how easy it would be to convert certain figures into cavalry as well. I think that might be a good one. But all these are ideas still in the air, and yeah, sadly we are stuck with the same camera. One apologises. So I hope all this is in focus, because if it isn't, it's going to look really stupid. But we'll keep you updated as time goes on. I hope you've enjoyed the video. It's just been a very simple video, because these guys are quite easy to paint. And over to you.
So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and comment down below what you think of the Russian soldiers. That's everything from me.
And that's everything from him. Goodbye.
See ya.